Hi everyone, welcome to the Liverpool Connection Podcast. This is my music and football episodes where I usually bring on a DJ, producer, musician to talk about my two loves of life, family first, but music and football. Today it's all about the music, and I have known this fella, not personally, but I've bought his tracks since early 2000s, and it's so weird that I know we've crossed paths before. He used to live in Houston and I live in Austin, and I used to play in Houston and he used to play in Austin quite a bit, and we're going to get into that. But he's a DJ producer. He's been on labels such as Bedrock, Nick Stoynoff's NOFF, which is an amazing label, Sudbeat, Saw Recordings, etc., etc., etc. I welcome to the podcast Randall Jones. Randall, it is really great to have you on, mate, because, like I said, I know we've crossed paths before, because, I know Andre Morant, obviously you do, he's a good mate of yours, absolutely stellar producer. Firstly, welcome. I usually like to, first question for my guests, when did music start for you, your roots in music? Were your mum and dad heavily into music, and did that have an influence on
First of all, thanks for having me on, brother. It's an honor, it's a pleasure to be here. Anytime someone wants to talk about music, that's really cool, and I appreciate that. And it's cool to hear Andre Morant's name. That dude's been a big influence, from day one. We can get into that. He's one of the most amazing DJs you probably ever hear. Music's actually started, interestingly enough, for me. My folks didn't have a background in music at all, but, my dad was in to get me a nice system. And, this is kind of bizarre. People say it's bizarre when I say it, but, when I was young, I liked, all kinds of different music, but I loved Van Halen. The original Van Halen, the original lineup. I was just Eddie Van Halen was everything to me. And I just thought he was the most amazing musician. And basically, I heard 1984, dude. I'm not going to lie. That album, I'll Wait, that song, I've been listening to rock, a lot of rock, the Cult I was really into. And that was my favorite band, and Van Halen, the Cult was my favorite English band, and Van Halen was my favorite American band. And at the time, I was starting to hear some cool sounds, and I was hearing also at the same time stuff by The Cure, stuff by a lot of new wave stuff at the time that was getting me open, and all those styles of music were starting to incorporate synthesizers, and I didn't really know what it was at first. I kind of had an idea. It was hey, these are synths or whatever. But, just the sounds, the way they complemented, whatever type of other parts, being it's from drums or guitar or whatever. And I was like, dude, what is this? I got to learn more about this. And, at the time, I was doing a lot of skating, and I had a buddy of mine who was a skater who was also into going out to clubs. And he was like, dude, you should, I was telling him, man, listen to these sounds about this and this. And he was like, dude, you should come down to a club with me sometimes and check this stuff out, if you're into that kind of, weird sounds and stuff. And we went to this place called House of Eden, which was a very old club in Houston. I believe it was owned by Neil, if I'm not mistaken, who was, an amazing dude, passed away a while back, and just a huge part of the Houston scene. He also owned Hyperia, which was a legendary club in America. He also owned Club Some. So anyway, Sebastian, this guy took me to that club, and I heard, house and new wave, and it just blew my mind. Dude, going back, and I had the best time. We started then, we used to just go out to clubs all the time by ourselves, skateboarding and everything took a side thing. We started going to clubs. And it was funny because now I look back, dude, we'd be the only people in those clubs. We'd go early, and it'd be us and 5 other people in there, and I'd just be by the booth or on the floor, just boom, so into the music. And now I look back and I think, man, those DJs, they must have been upset because there was nobody there, because it was DJ. At the time, it didn't matter to me at all, man. I was so into it. And the DJ, of course, was in the side. He was in a little booth. It isn't like it is to now, where it's huge production show with a bunch of fireworks and some dude with his hands in there. These guys are just in the dark, playing music. I was looking at all I could see were the two cue lights, on the 1200 staring you in the face and these round little red lights going around. I was like, how are those lights moving and not moving at all? It was just unbelievable, dude. The technology was just mind blowing. It looked like something out of Blade Runner. I was just like, this is the raddest thing I've ever seen. So that took me in that direction. I just started focusing, man. I was still listening to a lot of stuff by Floyd, and a lot of stuff by different bands that were incorporating that music the whole time. And it was really like, I was into it. And then I started getting into new wave music, industrial music, like stuff, going to those Houston clubs. Like Houston, believe it or not, a lot of people don't know this, Houston was an epicenter for electronic music and EDM, body music, new wave music in America. Just an epicenter at the time in like the late 80s. There were clubs in Houston that were changing the face. I mean, you had maybe New York and LA, but other than that, Houston was leading the way. You'd tune in on like Friday and Saturday nights, and they'd be doing live, like the main radio stations like 93Q and stuff, who played pop music during the day would be doing live broadcasts from the clubs, and they'd be playing all these underground tunes. And I remember when I was young, driving back, I was competing in a surf competition. I was probably like 13 years old and driving back into Houston with my dad late at night. And we had on one of these clubs on the radio in the car, and he's like, I remember him saying this day to me, hey Randall, this guy's been playing music for about an hour straight. I don't think he realized the dude was like playing records. I think he thought he was like playing in a band for an hour straight. He's like, the music hasn't stopped. And I was like, that really clicked with me. And looking back, I still remember that. And what really like changed things was one of those clubs, Numbers, legendary club. Absolutely legendary club. To this day, still open. If you go back and you talk to some of the most famous bands from like England, new wave bands from wherever in the world, you talk about Numbers, every one of them will remember. Meat Beat Manifesto, Skinny Puppy, Front 242, the Smiths, any of those guys, New Order. You can ask any of those guys about Numbers in Houston, and they'll know it. And I remember it was 1989, I think, or something like that, and this band I really like called The Shaman, who done this track called Projet, this dude rapping on it, was coming to play there. I love that rap. I had memorized the whole rap. Well, that any mountain is capable of moving. The shaman in the new generation are proven. You can be what you want to be. Just let your soul and your body and your mind be free. You know who that was? That was Mr. C rhyming on that. And I never knew it at the time. And I remember they came to Houston, The Shaman. They were playing with Jack Dangers from Meat Beat Manifesto and some other really dope band. I can't remember now. But, I mean, that lineup in itself, just looking back, like, wow. So the opening band had opened, and then they had, little did I know, it was Mr. C back there, and he was playing records between the opening band and this, and he was playing records, and I saw from far away he was doing the same thing. And this was like, I was like, this guy's doing what these guys in the nightclubs are doing. This is mixing. And the way he mixed, the guys in the nightclubs I heard was playing more like, at the time, were playing more new wave. You hear anything in a club in Houston that day, anything from like, reggae to hip hop, to house music, to new wave. But Mr. C at that show played the first set of house music, true house, like acid house, true house music mixed together. A whole like 30 minutes between the bands, all the bands like, set up their stuff. And it was like a changing point for me. It blew my mind. Like, it was unbelievable. And I was just like, whoa. At that point, I was like, this is what I want to do. I was just like, I don't know, this is what I want to be involved in or whatever. So that was like in 89. And, I went to school. I went to college up in Philadelphia, and wanted to use that chance to learn a little bit more about house music. And let me go back real quick before I get there. So basically there was this record shop in Houston called Megazone Records, and there was another shop called New Beat Records. So those were the two main record shops. And after I saw Mr. C in 89, I was like, dude, I got to go down to these record shops and figure out what's going on here. This is what I need to do. And I walked into Megazone. And, I didn't know it now, but there was Andre Morant, who was, just who you mentioned earlier. I consider him to be the godfather of house and techno in Houston. Like, no question. Andre's known as a techno producer, but techno's house. House is techno. I mean, you can sit here and say, oh, this and that, whatever, but dude, it's the same thing. I mean, it's obviously different styles and stuff, but if you can play techno, you can play house. If you can play house, you can play techno if you want to. I mean, if you know the records. Obviously, that's not the case if you don't have the music, but I'm talking from a purely technical standpoint, which is the basis, is mixing records. And this is all totally different from today, because now, from a technical standpoint, the art isn't really needed anymore. Maybe that'll change. But back then, you had to it was difficult, dude, to mix records. If you didn't know what you were doing, it sounded terrible. So the technical aspect was the basis of it, and Andre was the original, like, as far as I was concerned. There was other guys that were doing it, sure, but, for a generation, from my standpoint, he's the original guy. Now, I walked into Megazone Records, and he was mixing, and I really got to kind of watch him, see what he was doing. He'd be in there mixing without headphones, he was the first guy I ever saw to mix without headphones. You can do that on vinyl. I mean, it's easy to do it on CDs that you just match up the numbers, but on vinyl, it ain't that easy, So he was mixing without headphones. That was a mind-blowing thing for a kid like me. I ended up getting a job at New Beat, which was the competitor to Megazone, and I worked there, ordering records, working the front, and that's where I got I still have a tremendous record collection of old, like new wave, early house music, techno music, and stuff like that. It's funny, I let a buddy of mine borrow 2 records the other day for this gig he had in LA, and he really liked them. He came back, he's like, dude, you know these records are worth like $200 online? I was like, what? Oh, and I looked it up. One isn't even available. I was like, dude, I should go through this collection, check it out. But anyway, yeah, man, like Andre changed everything. Those experiences in those record stores changed everything. And then I was able to move to Philadelphia, New York, and immerse myself in the scene. And many years later, met Mr. C and put out my first record on M Recordings. So it all came back around. That was pretty dope. Like, he was the one that inspired me in the first place. And then 90, 91, and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like 10 years later, like 99, we signed our first record to Tigerhook, which is a whole story. I mean, to Tigerhook, to M Recordings, which is his label. So that's pretty dope.
Were you able to tell him the story?
Dude, we have talked. Dude, Rich and I, we go way back. We've had so many good times. I can tell you, we've sat. I not only was I able to tell him, man, I ended up booking him. Tigerhook. At the time, he didn't know, because so what happened was, we were fortunate enough, you need a break in music to be able to be heard by anybody. In my opinion, there are guys out there, that have amazing music, and they're lucky enough to get heard without, any hookups. But facts are, man, you need 95% of the time, get people listening to music, you need to have a hookup. And that came to us in the form of these 2 guys, Deep C and Chris Udo, who are part of Tigerhook. They were well known already as part of Wamdu at the time, which has had, at the time, it had some huge tracks. King of My Castle, a couple other things. And they were residents at Fabric in the UK, resident DJs there at the time. This was in like 2000 or something like that. I don't know. Fabric had just opened at the time, and they were the two original residents. Not that every week, every week I think it was Terry Francis and Lee Burge at the time, but monthly, Chris and Deep Sea went over there to play, and I went over there. I'd go over there, trying to make hookups. I had relationships with Mark Bell up in Blackpool, and I was getting over there trying to make some music. And I went over there one time with Chris and Deep, and we managed to walk into to the End offices. They were well known, Chris and Deep, and because they were well known, they gave our stuff a listen, and they liked it. I mean, if you at the time, it was really good music. It was tech house. It was the beginnings of tech house. Nowadays people call tech house something totally different. It's like bass house to me. I don't know what it is, but back then, tech house was just getting started, and we were in America, we were the first ones doing it. I mean, there were other guys doing it at the same time. I'm not saying we were the only ones doing it, but that was the beginning of tech house. And I don't care what anybody says, End Recordings was the first. There are other labels out there for sure in England, like Yucatec, and all kinds of labels doing the same type of sound. I'm not going to say that End was alone by any means in pushing that tech house sound, but dude, End was synonymous with it. Like, they had the nightclub there, the End, which is where they did all the tech nights. And End Recordings, I think if you ask anybody, where tech house started, what 5 labels started tech house, End Recordings will be in one of those 5. Everyone will say that. So we were putting out music then on End Recordings, and Richard didn't know it at the time, but when he came over to DJ, and I ended up, we were doing a Tigerhook night in Philly, we booked all kinds of guys, and I booked Richard there, we booked him and Leo, we booked Bushwhacker there, who I love, one of my favorite producers and DJs. But anyway, when Richard came, dude, at that night, we ended up rapping the whole Shaman rhyme together in the DJ booth. It was so rad. I came up and I started rapping it. He started rapping it with me right back. It was epic. I'll remember it for the rest of my life. I remember moments with Hector Romero, with Richard, when we'd been up playing a saw party, and Richard was in town, and he came by, and we were just talking like, I'm very good friends with him. I don't see him a lot anymore. He's busy, with his stuff and whatnot, but he's been a huge influence to me in my life. And he's a good guy and amazing. He's one of those guys, you got guys like John Digweed who travel the world and make so much money. And then you guys have guys like Richard West, Mr. C, who in my opinion is just as good of a DJ, has done just as much for the scene. But, he's not doing that. And all that comes down to just representation, I mean, that's what the difference between being a musician and a professional musician, as long as you have the chops, is nothing but representation, just management agents. And that's how all the big DJs you see now traveling all the world is just because of representation. I mean, that's all it is. I learned that the hard way.
Yeah, and also kind of being at the right place at the right time,
Absolutely.
Especially for John, especially coming over to America because, I went to school in Savannah. So I would go to Orlando, Jacksonville, Gainesville nearly every single weekend, and Chris Fortier, Jimmy Van M started that whole progressive scene, and then Digweed and Sasha came, and it just blew up for them.
Yeah.
The American audience just took to those two like gold.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Right place, right time, like you said.
Yeah. And one of my good mates, Pete Bones, Pete Bones.
Well, I released records for Pete. I love Pete. Yeah. Another legend, dude. A legend.
Another one that I think just didn't get his just rewards.
As good of a DJ as anybody out there, Pete Bones.
Absolutely.
And producer.
And he when he started, he was up there with the whole Nick Warrens, the Digweed, Smashers.
Absolutely.
And
Red Ant.
Again, he told me, they went down this path and he went down this path. They got the path to stardom, while Pete, still an amazing DJ. If you book him today, he will tear the roof off.
Absolutely.
Place, his productions are,
flawless.
But, there's a hierarchy, as you know now, in the DJ world.
It's just representation, dude. It's just managers and agents. There's like 5 agents out there, and if you aren't booked by one of them, you aren't getting any gigs. That's all it is, dude. That's all it's ever been. Pete Bones is just as good a DJ and producer as John Digweed. I mean, I'm not going to say, John's a 10, maybe Pete's a 9, or maybe he's 11. The point is, that he could rock it just as much as John. The only difference is, he's had... Dude, it's hard to have consistent representation for so many years. John is... there's so much more to being a DJ and a musician to being world famous. You have to have the right pieces in place. Dude, John's done such a good job with his ideas as far as, there was a time, where he was kind of falling off. All these guys like Papa and these guys like that sound was considered not in vogue and stuff. And, John just really had some smart ideas, man. The bunker sessions over COVID, the way he's put out his compilations over the years, just brilliant compilations. It's hard to keep that going. It requires a lot of money, a lot of finance, and a lot of time. And he's done that. And all respect due to him. It's hard to do that when you're working on a budget, you're living life, you're getting paid, $500 a gig instead of $10,000 a gig. It's difficult. Basic what you just talked about. So I originally met John through Chris Fortier. Chris Fortier was cool enough to pass him my records, and John signed it. I know those guys very well. I'd known Chris, and we booked Chris in Philly at one of our Tigerhook nights. At the time, he was going by Fade. His amazing producer and DJ Chris, always has been, always will be. And I passed him some records, not a record, a CD, because that's how you made your demos back then in the late 90s, early 2000s. And Chris Fortier passed it on to John, and then John signed that record. And at the time, I had a manager, and the manager handled the signing of that record to Bedrock, and it was done really well. And then after that, I ended up meeting Jimmy. I could tell you so many stories about that stuff. I don't know if you're aware of this. I moved from Philadelphia to New York to work with Jimmy in this studio on this project we were working on. We were recording a lot of artists, everybody that was on that agency. At the time I was with that agency, it was called Balance at the time, and then it went on to be called the Collective Agency. And I was booked by that agency, and that's when, at the height of my career, that wasn't the height of my career, but dude, I was going everywhere at that time, week in, week out, Amsterdam, Singapore, Argentina, Buenos Aires. And I'll be quite honest with you, I was killing as a DJ, but that's because they were the best agency in the world for that type of music at the time, I mean, it's all really just about the agents. that agency, I ended up at the time, I was in New York for 2 or 3 years working with Jimmy. We were doing this big project. He had really good ideas. We were working with this company called, I still worked with them. It's now called, I'm having a brain fart here. Anyway, it's a huge music licensing firm owned by Viacom and Sony. And I had signed some tracks to them, and Jimmy and I were working on something to incorporate all these artists we were working with to sign stuff, because they basically sign stuff for music for like marketing, background music for TV shows. And we were working on that project for like 3 years. It didn't end up coming to fruition. I think there were, some expectations by the company that I guess our side didn't come through. I don't know. I don't really know the details, but that didn't pan out. And at the time, living in New York was expensive, man. The agency closed down. I was still getting some gigs, but, I went down and played a gig in Houston at Rich's, which Neil was running. The guy from Hyperion was running with Sean Carnahan at the time, and it was just awesome, man. It was so packed. Like, people were going crazy. And I'd grown up in Houston, as I mentioned, listening to that music, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to cruise back down to Houston and see what's going on. I was kind of over New York. I mean, greatest city in the world, New York. I love it there, but, I lived there for a few years, and then I was just like, hey, I was ready for a change of scenery to kind of get back to my roots, to save some money, so I moved my studio down to Houston, and that's how that ended up happening. And when I moved to Houston, they were like, oh, you're moving to Houston, you're the label's coming out there. I think a lot of people kind of wrote me off because I wasn't living in New York anymore, but, it is what it is. You know what you can do. So,
yeah. Well, I want to go back a little bit because the Philly, you're going to school, but then you're also starting to produce. And who takes you under your wing? King Britt and Josh Wink. I mean,
yeah, that was pretty dope. Well, it's funny you said that because I was just talking to King. I went and saw him play an all vinyl set 3 nights ago. Believe it or not, we live in the same city now in San Diego. He's a professor at UCSD. And he has a really cool program there teaching black electronic music, or electronic music influenced by African Americans, which is a really cool program he's doing there. But I got right place at the kind of right time, but it also just came down to the fact that I was into the music, man. I got that gig because I went out there and, I just liked Josh and King. They were playing the stuff I was into. I looked at I was just like, man, I love this music. I liked, one thing that's hurt me, I think, in my career is I like all types of music. I feel like DJs who you're able to pigeonhole their music and they find a genre, those guys do really well. That's what people are into because they're like, hey, this guy, he plays this sound. We could go hear him. Where in my sets, if you listen to my set, man, I'll play everything from a King Britt record to a Josh Wink record to something by Digweed. Like, half my records sound like house music, half of them sound like progressive or techno, whatever the hell you want to call it. I never really had any genres because I come from a place where, new wave, you can play new wave into EBM, into techno and whatever, so I like different music. I made different music under the same name, where I think that's, if I had a piece of advice to give to a young producer, I'd be like, Dave Ball had a good idea. He did like Joey Negro and a bunch of different stuff, under different names with different sounds. But my point is that, I was lucky enough to be able to be influenced by a lot of different styles of music. And the only reason that happened there in Philly is because I love Josh and King. And dude, I would go out. They did this night at this club, Fluid. I would show up there at 10 p.m. 9:30. I'd be the first one there, and I'd bring a bunch of girls with me, and I'd get on the dance floor, and we'd dance around. And after doing that for a while, they're like, who is this kid that's always showing up with people, and like early when nobody's there? So I just started talking to them, and I knew how to do lights. I taught myself the, Jesus, I can't even, it's been so long, I can't even remember the controller name. But anyway, it operated, they had some IntelliBeams, not even IntelliBeams, they just had track spots on the spot. So I started doing their lights for them. And they're like, damn, he can do lights and stuff. And I was like, by the way, guys, I'm also working on some music. At the time, I was working with Cakewalk. And I had like some outboard gear, all in MIDI. It was a nightmare, like trying to figure that shit out. Dude, it was so hard to make music back then. Like, nowadays, looking at it, just working with Ableton, it's like it was so difficult. So my tracks weren't very good, and they knew this, but King and Josh knew this guy named John Wicks, who they'd work with a lot. And he had a studio, and he was working with a lot of people, especially with King. And King was like, dude, you should get an internship with this guy. Just show up and learn how to use the Macs, because he was using Macintoshes. And, at the time, that was a big step, because nowadays I think PCs can handle it, but back then, like, trying to do Cakewalk on a PC to make music, a reason as compared to jumping into Logic on a Mac. So I went out and like started interning in a studio, and I learned how to use Logic, which wasn't owned by Apple yet. It was owned by a company called eMagic, and I learned how to engineer through him, and that just changed everything. That was the break for me that really took my tracks to the level where, you know, I could start like getting some attention, because it was really hard at that time to get your stuff to sound right. You know, there wasn't any inboard software like bass, like compressors, limiters, any type of EQs. You know, you had to have the gear. So, you know, I was able through King and Josh to be able to work with John, and then I'd start coming down, and those guys really helped me out a lot. You know, Ovum Records, I was around from the beginning of that. Matt Brookman and Ovum was just so dope. You know, it's a record label. It's not maybe so well known now, but back in the day, it was just one of the greatest labels out there, you know, and we'd be down there we'd be going every year down to the music conference and the Ovum parties, and I remember DJing at, like, I DJed with Pete at his party. He had a Red Ant party, and I played for him in 2003 or something. Pete was so dope, dude. I'd always meet him at this bar down there. It was a dive bar in Miami. It was so rad, just on court. It was so cool. But anyway, yeah, Philly. So Philly, you know, I just started, you know, going out. And one thing I can tell young producers is, man, if you want to get your stuff listened to, go out early, show up, you know, get out there. You know, as an older guy at 52, I don't make it out to the clubs as much as I used to. I'm just, you know, not a huge night guy. I kind of get a little bit bugged out by people, but that's one thing I wish I did, was get out there more often. You know, I'm more of the musical aspect, and that's what you need to do to get your stuff heard, is get out and meet people. So.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you. I just think, you know, again, we live in this world where we have the computer now, and kids can make their own tracks in their own house. But in order to get it out there, they're not going to the clubs. You know, they're just sending it to other labels, but getting this rejection very quickly because it's not engineered properly. You can, you know, thousands upon thousands of records come out every week.
All the time.
A lot of them are just absolute dog shit. Because, you know, the highs are too high, the lows are too low. It's not matched. And I just think being able to watch people in the studio, especially like a Josh Wing, King Britt, it's just very valuable. I mean, I had Howie B on, and he was a T-boy, you know. He just got all the studio people.
One of the greatest.
But was watching all the time, and then they would give him an hour or two in the studio to you know.
Is that right?
Yeah. You know,
cool.
Just to leave him alone for an hour to figure stuff out. And what you were saying though is get out there, meet people, meet the DJs, pass them, you know, your tracks, and go, hey, give this a listen. And then the next week, I guarantee if it's good, you'll hear that DJ play it.
Yeah.
And you'll get more people coming up to the DJ going, what is that track? Oh, it's that lad over there, you know, and then, oh, you're a producer? Oh, you're a producer. It just starts the trickle effect, you know, but just staying cramped up in your house, making music, it's just, yeah.
It don't work.
Yeah.
You got to get out there for sure. I've had like a, you know, I don't know if you've heard of this guy, Broken Hill, but he's been a recent success story that I was involved with. He basically was our intern. I have a recording studio I'm involved with here in San Diego called The Music Company. It's a not-for-profit recording studio. It's a big space. We record a lot of big bands. Not big bands, but big bands in San Diego. Guys have won awards around here. But we had an intern there named Kurt, and Kurt was a dubstep guy when he came in, incredibly talented, and he's now Broken Hill. He did a remix for Blondish, engineered some stuff for her, and he's now been picked up by huge agencies everywhere right now. And my point to what you're saying is, this kid was just out there nonstop. Like, Kurt made great music, but he would drive up to LA every week, dude. He was out there like, I'm on the way and come back. He's like, I was out there with this. I'm like, oh man, you getting out there. But he reminded me when I was a kid, you got to do that. And he was out there. He was talking to everybody, man. He was talking to, and you know, that's what it is. And then looking at what he did, you think things have changed now. You know, I'd be like, hey, everybody can just make a track in their computer and you know, just send it out. But you're right. To your point, man, you still got to get out there and you got to meet people. You got to get involved in the scene, you know. And that's something that I'm completely uninvolved with right now. I think that's kind of why, I don't really get out there a whole lot, is just because I'm uninvolved. I still talk with guys like, John or Hernan or these guys online and send them my tracks, and they'll play my tracks. But I mean, if you really want to be out there, you need to be making music. You got to be sending out constantly. You got to be contacting people. You just got to just stay in the scene, just be part of it, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think back in the day, a little bit easier to approach a DJ with your white label,
Yes.
Just hand it to them. Now, the DJ's so far up on a pedestal, like if you want to do it to a top DJ, you've got no chance. You've got no chance of really hearing what you've made.
Now, what do you give them? A CD? A USB stick? Here's my USB stick.
Throw it at them.
Throw it at them, exactly.
Say, listen to this. It's tougher because, like I said, thousands of tracks go out and they fall through the cracks. And there's so many good tracks that fall through the cracks. Tracks that I didn't hear about 10 years ago, that were made 10 years ago, I'm hearing now and going, what? Through Bandcamp. And I'm going, holy crap, if I had that track 10 years ago, it's just amazing. That's why I love Bandcamp, because you can go down that rabbit hole, just
absolutely
for a few hours. But what's your thoughts? Because again, we live in a different time, so we can go to Beatport, we can go to Amazon or Apple, and you can buy the music. The record shop was the number one place I used to go to socialize, buy records, but the biggest thing was to just hang out with like-minded people, and it's not like that anymore. When I heard something in the club, I would be at the door on Monday morning, banging on the door.
Yeah.
I heard this do, and they go, yeah, I know that one. Yeah. And give me a stack of 20, and I kind of miss that. Your mates with the sellers.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're in a city like Austin, there was only 10 of those records there. Yeah, and then nobody else is getting them. So if you were mates with those guys, you were getting one, and nobody else was. Where now anybody has access. It's just a different thing, man. It's a totally different thing. Like, I guess the commonality, the common point is the music kind of holds like the same thing. But other than that, man, it's a different culture. It's 100% just a different thing, and that's cool. Things change and everything. I do think, to your point, that kids now are really. It's a bummer for them because they miss the camaraderie, I think. DJs, that's why I think there's a little bit more competition. There was always competition between DJs. There's no doubt about that. I could name, guys in Philly who really tried to keep me down. There were some big guys there who I didn't have that much respect for, In the end, I think it's cool when you just really reach out. And that's one thing that King and Josh did. A lot of other guys like, Blake, Boy Blake was a big DJ there. And Victor Duplay and... There were guys that really reached out. That was something you could find in the record shops a lot of times. And it was cool if your boy worked there. But on the other hand, if your boy didn't work there, it was hard to get those good records. But I mean, that's part of how it should be. It's a club, and when you put your work in, you eventually get accepted, and that's how things go. And nowadays, it's a little bit different, but it's a different world we live in. So
it is. I just miss being able to walk up and I've got a stack of 30 records.
That was the greatest
for me.
That was the greatest. And that's what I'm back on right now, bro. I don't know if you notice, you'll see behind me, I'm just playing all vinyl now. Nice. Basically we do this. We're doing this Monday night. That's all vinyl. I'm into vinyl. I just did a podcast on my Audio Espresso that's all vinyl. It'll be the first. We do a podcast called Audio Espresso from the music studio. It's done pretty well. We got guys like Halo Varga, Dylan Payne, who's a big up-and-coming DJ, and some good guys on there. But anyway, I recently did a vinyl set, our first vinyl set on there. And it's just, there's something cool about getting back to vinyl, bro. I mean, it's just... when everything just gets out of control and you're like, dude, what is going on? It's reassuring that that medium is still there. Nothing will ever change. If you walk in and people are like, whoa, that piece of wax is turning around and somehow making a sound. That's just cool. That's just cool. It's not getting better. So
there's nothing better to me than vinyl, but just because I love the pops in it.
Yeah.
Whatever was put in the grooves. That's what you get, you know. But just it's the artwork as well. I used the whole thing, you know. If it was gatefolds, you just stare at
them. Just looking at them.
You would read every single last word on you know, on the gatefold or whatever it was. But yeah, I miss playing it, and the smell of brand.
It was the greatest. The smell of it, everything. Hey man, look at my new MP3. Said nobody ever.
I know.
You know, but you get a vinyl, you're like, dude, look at my new vinyl.
Yeah,
it's like
getting home, ripping the cellar, you know, the plastic off, and just it's weird. I've talked a few times about like the smell of vinyl on this podcast, and I'm sure some listeners are like, what a weirdo, you know.
What, dude?
I'm like, there's nothing better.
You just talking about it is making me smell it. I love it, dude. It's nothing better. You pop that cellophane open, and it's just like, dude, it's equivalent to like turning on a new piece of like pro electronic equipment. You know, there's that like warm like electronic smell that comes out of it sometimes. Same with vinyl, man. You know what I mean? And that's really cool. I still buy new vinyl records a lot, like by bands. You know, The Fix, one of my favorite bands actually. I just got a new piece from them. They're still hooked out there. What I got here? Let's see if I can find it here. I don't know, but anyway, The Fix just put out a new Christmas song called Winter's Time, which I picked up, which is really dope. I can't find it right now, but these are two of my favorite albums. Leon Russell right here, his original album. If you don't know this guy, go find out about this guy. One of the greatest musicians in the history of music, one of the greatest producers. So as far as like something that you can learn as a producer, you know, one thing I always tell up and coming producers, man, check out other styles, you know, because what you're going to learn from guys like this guy ran one of the most famous recording studios in the world. It's called The Church. It's in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He recorded Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, the Stones, Elton John, you know, the greatest of the greatest there. Another one I really got, one of my favorite artists of all time, Willie Nelson. Willie Nelson is my favorite American bard. I grew up listening to this guy. Unbelievable. This album, always on my mind, a classic by him. Good stuff, you know. And if you listen to these albums, they seem like a lot of people are like, oh, those are corny, those are old school. But let me tell you, you'll learn more listening to this about regular music production and then listening to your house tracks next to it. You can learn a lot that way, that's for sure. You know, and just listening to these old records, like you said, the pop, the warmth of them, incredible. So,
yeah, I agree with you, because like I was listening to an interview with Dave Clark the other day, and he was saying,
legend.
Oh yeah, just and he's a no bullshitter as well.
Yeah,
he doesn't love the pedestal DJ. He likes down and dirty.
He calls him out.
He calls him out. Yeah. Love that. What he was saying is like if you're a producer, like make sure like if you're in the studio, make sure that you have like a radio going on in the kitchen with some different music.
Dude, good call.
If you're just constantly listening to 4/4 or break or you know drum and bass, I don't think you're going to be as creative. You know, if you hear a different sound in your ear, you're going to go, oh, something might, you know, jog a little memory. Something might jog like, oh, I kind of like that sound, you know.
Absolutely.
I think that's the best advice. And if you're not listening to Dave Clark, there's something wrong with you.
Dude, one of the greatest. I have this, I can't even remember, it's this a 12, 13-minute remix he did I was listening to the other night. It's old, it's like just the sickest break beats, dude, like the sickest break beat. He's a ledge, the master. I mean, he was making that music sound like today. Back in the day, it was really hard to make it sound like that, so my stuff pales in comparison to him. So he's a badass, that's for sure.
Well, I mean, you know he's a badass when he's still around and he's still kicking ass, you know. And he's
what, like in his 60s now? Late 50s maybe?
Gotta be
early 60s maybe?
I would say late 50s.
Yeah, and you don't see him playing much anymore because I think he don't like that. Like you said, he doesn't like that DJ in front, like hands in the air type thing. He's not about that at all. So he'll only play like certain gigs and whatnot.
Yeah, he's very selective, and I appreciate that though. So you know, if he's coming to your town, you know he's doing it for a reason, either because he knows the promoters or he knows the sound is really good. You know, he likes to be on the floor, which I love. That's what you want. You know, I don't want to be looking up at a DJ that, you know, 100 feet, whatever, in the air. I just...
Dude, it's embarrassing. I have this whole thing, like, you know, there are a couple gigs back in the day, you know, where I might have, you know, had a little too much to drink or whatever, and, like, got excited and, like, you know, pulled some of this, and I look back at there's videos, and I'm just like, oh, God.
I'm going to find those videos.
There's not very many out there, I can tell you that, thankfully. But, however, my point is, I feel like all these DJs nowadays are going to look back in 20 years and be like, oh, my God. I can't.
Yeah.
Dude, it's so embarrassing seeing these guys up there. And, you know, Digger's made a good point. You know, he and I talk a lot about vinyl these days because I'm into vinyl a lot these days. And he made a good point, man. And I don't know why I never thought about this, but John said the reason why you see all these guys, you know, nowadays, you know, with the hands in the air and the theatrics and stuff is because back in the day when we were playing with records, we didn't have time to do that. Because you couldn't sit there and just put it on, you know, I mean, most of those guys are doing pre-recorded sets anyway, but even if they're mixing CDs, you know, with the 0.8 trick, you can just put that shit on there and let it ride and do whatever, dude. It's so easy to mix. Well, back in the day, it was not that easy to mix. Like, you had to constantly ride the pitch, you know, for the very rare time that the fucking thing's locked up and you didn't have to pay attention to it, then you need to be looking for your next record because it's not like a little cue jog button. You just gotta, you know, you'd have a couple of different, like, you know, bags of records, and it just wasn't that easy, you know, mixing. You'd have to keep it together up there, and you had a good point. I think, you know, that element's not there anymore, so what are you going to do behind there? I guess put your hands in there and, like, fix the girls.
Touch as many knobs as you can.
If I have to see, dude, the classic thing is the new thing with all the girls playing techno, dude, and just the same exact, like, bouncing thing. I think it was just so funny, dude. It's like you're halfway good looking, and no disrespect, I'm not talking about any girl. There's some amazing girls DJ, you know, Modab and all these girls. They're badasses. Don't get me wrong on that. But some of these you see nowadays with this new, you know, there's like a bunch. I just like this girl Sarah Landry. You know, I shouldn't call out any names. You ever heard of this girl? Sarah Landry. I've never heard of her before. My buddy went down to this CrossFest thing, and he's like, I heard this girl close out with some of the worst. He's like, Sarah Landry. So I'm like, I never heard. What do you mean? He showed me a video. I was like, oh God, dude, what is going on here right now? Like, and she's like, I don't know. I shouldn't call out people. I mean, she's super famous. I'm sure she's a badass. I'm sure but it's just something. Let me put it this way: it's something that I can't relate to at all. It's crazy. Like, it's just the music is. I don't know if there's just no soul, or maybe I'm not doing drugs anymore.
No, you hit the nail on the head. Like, for me, you know, I'm a big, like, Vince Watson fan.
Oh, bro, what's he up to? Is he still making records, right?
Still, oh my God. I had him on the podcast a few months ago. He's making albums for like 3 years from now. Like, he had enough, like...
Last record I got from him was like a year. I need to retune into his stuff. One of the greatest.
But again, as you say, soul. Every piece of music that I pretty much own has to have heart and soul in it.
Yeah.
This, and I don't. Again, techno is used very loosely these days. To me, techno is Detroit techno. It's soul. It's or industrial. This 160 beat per minute with like high octane vocals.
That's what I'm talking about.
I don't get it.
That's what I'm talking about. That's crazy, man.
You know, I get it. I'm older. You know, I'm like you. I don't really go out to clubs anymore. So I get that the kids are kind of into it. I just don't get it. And you know, you talking of Sarah, it's funny because I think she came from Chicago. She moved to Austin.
She's from Austin?
Yeah, wow. Yeah. And she played here, and she was playing like tech house, like good DJ. And then she moved to Germany, and that's where
she moved to Germany.
Yeah, she hilarious. And I think that's when the whole, like, you know, we can make a brand out of her. And I think that's where it kind of, like, people saw money in her.
Is that what it was?
It has to be. I mean,
I don't know anything about. All I know is, like you said, man. I mean, I'm into happy. I grew up with happy hardcore. I mean, I'm into fast stuff and stuff like that. But yeah, it's wild the stuff nowadays. But I mean, dude, like you said, the kids probably love it, man. You know, I can see if you're on a bunch of drugs, maybe it'd be cool. Who knows? I mean, I'm probably talking out my ass here. I just, it's a different thing, you know. I just don't get it or whatever. So.
Well, to me, it sounds like banging my head against it over and over again. I mean, it just does. And again, you know,
for sure.
I think the older I get, the slower the BPMs for me.
Yeah, well, so I was into that because I swear I was playing at like 118 a few years ago, man. And I've always played, if you listen to my sets, like I've always played a little bit slower, but it's funny you say that because I was like, the older you get, but lately it's kind of speeding up, like 124 again, you know, now 125. Don't go too slow, bro. Eventually it'll be like 80 BPM. Then you'll be dead.
Stop. Yeah. Hopefully not. But I also want to talk about, like, because, I mean, one of your first big tracks on Bedrock, the Patchwork EP. Beautiful.
Yeah, Pathwork EP. Here, let me see that was cool.
It's just mental because that was, I think, 2002, 2003. You know.
But here's the test press.
Oh wow! That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, brother, I like Thing. He called out an old record I did. So Beautiful Thing was the first record on Bedrock. That was in like 2001. And then this Pathwork EP came out in 2003. Dude, this was awesome because look at this. Tonight right here, the acapella, that's Ursula Rucker, man. I don't know if a lot of people know who Ursula Rucker is. An absolute legend, dude. And I was hooked up with her through King Britt and Philip Charles, who's another guy I could talk about and just go on forever as being a legend and an absolute genius. He's someone a lot of people might not have heard about, but in Philadelphia at the time, and all over the world at the time, like guys like Digweed and everybody bowed down to Phil Charles. He was considered, like, his studio in Philly, I go there every day. He was like my best friend, and he probably at the time had $150,000 in cents in there. And this was in early 2000s, which means now it would be like 350 to 400 grand in cents. You know, and he had he had Stevie Wonder's original Synthie, EKS Synthie. That thing at the time was worth like 30, 40, 50 grand alone because it was Stevie Wonder's. He had one of, who's the guy from Yes? Keith Emerson, I think, one of his sets. Like, he had these insane sets, and I met him also through King. King and I would go there, and Wink would be there, dude, and everybody would go over and play and take parts from his synths and then use them on their tracks. And Phil was just insane, and Phil was playing bass on tour for Ursula Rucker. Phil was an incredible bass player. He played bass for a lot of really dope bands. He was on some Roots records and a bunch of other stuff, but it's on Macy Gray. But he was playing bass for Ursula Rucker. She was touring off of the IK7. I don't know if you remember, she did like a DJ Kicks album, or no, she didn't do a DJ Kicks. She did that, but she did an album on IK7. IK7 was like a huge international label at the time. I don't know if it's around anymore. But anyway, they went on tour. It was crazy. I remember this for the rest of my life. And Phil and I ended up moving in together in that amazing studio. I was so blessed. And, dude, I remember this to this day. It was September 15th, 2001. I had gone up to New York for a gig, and I was dating a girl up there who was working in a club up there. And we were in New York, and we were like, should we stay the night at my buddy's house? We were like, nah, let's drive back to Philly. And we drove back to Philly, and I crashed at her place. And I remember getting up September 16th, 2001. Not September 11th, excuse me. It was September 10th, September 11th. But I had no idea what was happening. I just walked home to Phil's house, and he's walking out of the house as I'm walking up. And I look at him, and he's like white as a sheet. And I'm like, bro, are you okay? And he's like, tour's off, dude. And I'm like, what? What happened? He's like, dude, you haven't seen the news? I'm like, no, what's going on? And that's when we got on the news, and like everything changed in that moment. Like the whole world changed. You know, Phil's tour was off. That was the smallest little thing that happened. You know, everything changed. And I remember that like it was yesterday. I can't believe that was over 20 years ago. It was crazy. But that was kind of the beginning of some whack stuff, man. Like, you know, things tightened up. It was almost like COVID. Things tightened up traveling wasn't as easy. A bunch of people, like, dude, Phil and I, we were living, we were kids living day to day on touring. Like that tour he had come out with Ursula Rucker was to Europe. They were going through Germany and like a bunch of different places. That tour getting canceled, jacked his thing up. Our stuff got jacked up. It was crazy. I remember it was so wild. The 2 weeks before, I booked Omid 16B at a Tigerhook night in Philly. And I remember going through security, going down to the gate to meet him, to pick him up off the plane. Now you could never do that. You can't go to the gate to meet anybody. You can't even get through security if you don't have a plane ticket. But back then, we'd just go right to the gate to meet him, So that's a huge point. I remember where things changed a lot. But my point is, like, Phil, man, amazing dude. And he hooked me up with Ursula. So after that, they weren't touring. And that was in 2001. And that kind of really like changed her trajectory. I feel like a lot of artists who were like on the cusp at the time and who couldn't travel as much and tour, like kind of lost some momentum. My point is she had a little bit more time, and I was lucky enough to be able to get her on one of my tracks, which was just incredible. On one of our tracks, Phil did that track with me. Tonight, if you look, it's a co-production with him. He did the keys on it, and she was nice enough to speak some spoken word vocals. That's one of the most amazing artists I've ever, worked with. A lot of people don't know her nowadays, but in my opinion, she's one of the greatest like female poets of our generation. So.
Yeah, I know her through King Britt.
Nice.
And again, when I hear a good vocal, I'll track the person down because in house music, the vocalists are used sparingly.
Yeah,
it's not like the whole song is written.
No, it's not a classical vocal arrangement at all.
Yeah, so I would always track down who these vocalists are and go listen to their albums, and buy their albums.
That's the way to do it.
And I just think these days people aren't really, they're just listening to the music and the vocalists that's put to the side,
Yeah.
They're not going down the rabbit hole of like, oh, all right, wow, I like what she's saying or he's saying. I'm going to go check that out. They're not interested. They're just like, because, we live in, again, a society where you've got these 2-3 minute tracks being played, and it's got to have a big drop in it, or it's not going to do the job that these people want you to do for these record labels. And I think
that's a huge thing that's changed. I mean, it's gone from groove and loop based music to I don't know if that's really like that around the world, if that's just an American thing. But yeah, like you said, people, or at least in America, people want these like 3.5 minute tracks. That's kind of a Las Vegas thing. A lot of that stems from, I put it back to in 2009, 8, 9, when house music, actually it says not really house, I should call it electronic music, really hit the mainstream in America. With Greta and these guys. Before that, you never heard 4/4 beats on the radio. Any type of commercial music was always had an R&B or hip-hop or rock and roll background. And, 4/4 music was shunned. The only thing I can think of is like, I like to move it, move. There was a couple tracks out there, but that was even like 1990s. Like, from 2000s, you never had that. And then there was this huge influx that happened, I can't remember, like 8 or 9 or 10, where Greta and Afrojack and a couple other guys came in, and I remember at the time a bunch of DJs, not a bunch of DJs, but a couple of DJs I knew posted on Facebook. They're like, "Oh my God, my dreams come true! America's finally accepted house music." I remember thinking in my head, "Dude, this is not a blessing. Long term, this is not going to work out well." And it did, dude. Like, in my opinion, what happened, and it really hurt a lot of artists like me, is the underground music industry was like, F this. We're going as far away from this as we can. And that's when all that crap, like minimal and all that stuff. I shouldn't say crap, that's good. Minimal is amazing music, and it is what it is. It's really good, but you had people stepping so far away, trying to get so far away from any commercial, where it was just, you had these sets that were just like boring, dude. The music that was coming out was boring, like, and anything that had any vocal in it, was like, oh, that's no good. It's too mainstream, even if it was used sparingly. And I think a lot of people like kind of had like, dude, no vocals in house music. We're only going to bleeps and bloops, and that happened forever. And then I feel like finally around like COVID, things started like getting back to where like, guys like, I hate to use the term progressive because I just consider it like, minimal spacey house. That's all I've ever considered that played is spacey house music, like futuristic Blade Runner spacey house music. But a lot of people coin it like, progressive or whatever. That type of music started coming back, and recently I think it is, that style. You're seeing a lot of guys like Anthony Papa and Dave Seaman touring a lot more because people are finally like, getting around to, hey, maybe I can still make some vocals and some more kind of, cool stuff rather than just like crazy, super minimal techno, Berlin stuff. I can tell you, no, I'm not going to say. Anyway, so Berlin's a very different place than, what a lot of people know music as. But, that just became such an epicenter for like the cool music from 2000. I feel like Berlin hit in like 2009 or 2010. I mean, obviously it was there before. It's been there forever. Cool shit's been going on in Berlin forever. But it became all about Berlin in like 2008 up until recently. Every dude I knew was like moving to Berlin, And I'm like, that's what was popular for a long time is that Berlin sound, which is very like techno. I can tell you. From my standpoint, I love some of it, but for the most part, I just like, it's just something different than what I know. So, for a long time, I feel like a lot of artists were like, hey, in the end, as a professional musician, not only do you need to have good representation, but you need to stay relevant, And a lot of that is, riding a line between, hey, how can I change my style to make it relevant into today's age? And that's something I was never interested in. Like, I'll be honest with you, I make music for myself. I make the music I like. And if I can't make money at it, I'm going to do something else and sell weed, or do whatever I can do, whether it's that, whether, it's be involved in anything. And music is going to be a love for me, rather than try to twist it around and try to make something that's relevant. That just doesn't make any sense to me. And it does for a lot of people who are living off of music, and I'm not dissing it at all. If you can do that, all the more power to you. It's an amazing skill, but I prefer just make the kind of the tracks I like.
Yeah, and that's how it should be. Again, we live in this social media world where a lot of these older DJs are having to have Instagram accounts, Twitter, and all this bollocks, to try and stay relevant. And that's why I like. Me mate Pete's just like, look, I'll put up one post.
Same with me. And check my Instagram. There's nothing on. I mean, there's some music, but dude.
Yeah, he's just like, when I'm playing, I'll let people know, and that's about it. Like, I'm not gonna like get on this social media train.
I tell you though, man, like the guy I was just telling you about, Curtis Broken Hill. You should follow him, man. The style of music he makes is a little bit more over top than the stuff we're probably listening to, but he makes really good music. And dude, he's a classic example, bro. His Instagram, he's a genius with it. Like, I don't know if he's doing it or if he has a team that he works with, but dude, he'll take his decks up onto a damn helicopter and be playing in a helicopter for a post, and then he's got and he puts these posts together. They're ingenious. He had this one that he had a little game program, make a little game for one of his tracks or something like that, and it's just, dude, he's got a post like every third day on Instagram. It's so rad. The post looks so professional, and that's what you need to have today. I mean, let me tell you, if you're an old DJ today and you want to make a living off of DJing and you don't want to deal with Instagram, you need to hire someone to do that. Simple as that. Because if you don't have that, it's just like part of the game. I mean, back in the day, you had to learn how to mix. Well, now you have to learn how to do Instagram. It's just part of the culture. So
yeah, it's another part of the DJ's job.
Absolutely.
That's why I have mad respect for Danny Howells, because yes, he's kind of been put in that progressive realm, but man, can that man play tech house, deep house, disco? He can play whatever. Same with Papa. He's in the same, boat, I think, where you could put him at any kind of night, a disco night, a house night, and he will blow your socks off.
That's how a real DJ should be. And Danny's one of the best. Danny Howell's one of the best. Danny Tenaglia, one of the best. John Digweed, one of the best. Any three of those guys, you could do that. Pete Bones, you could do that. Who else out there? Any of these dope guys we've been talking about today. Richard, you could do that. Leo, you could do that. Bushwhacker, he could do that. any of those dudes, they're DJs. Now you have to understand the difference between a really badass DJ and, a guy like, Andre, for example, one of the best techno DJs out there, insane techno producer. Not really that type of DJ. He could probably play a disco. Actually, Andre could probably do that. He's a badass. But there's guys out there that can't. I mean, there's guys that are just grew up with that type of music, and I think a lot of the newer DJs, that's their thing, But
they stick to one lane.
But 99% of those DJs, you never know. In 10 years, they're going to be not. I mean, that's the thing that a lot of these young kids don't understand is like, dude, fame is fleeting. Like, and that's one thing I tell a lot of the kids now. I'm like, listen, just do your best and just stay grounded and stay on it and keep those connections going, because even when you're at the top of the game, to do something like John where you last like 30 years in the game, dude, there's like one guy out of like tens of thousands that are going to make that happen. It's a hard road, professionally.
Well, just do it because you love it. If
that's why to do it. Exactly.
If money comes, then that's even better. But I do like Friday nights here with my kids, and we have like
nice
a party because I get to play them the music I love, and I see them just dancing silly and just
with your kids.
Yeah,
that's great. They like the music.
Yeah. I've got me little 8-year-old. She's like, so how do you get to?
Dude, teach them young, brother.
Yeah,
good work, Papa Bear. She
loves hitting the sampler, and I'm like, well, okay, that's the 20th time too many. That's all right. But the enjoyment I get from playing records is still there since I first stole my sister's Erasure.
Nice. Love your Erasure. Vince Clarke, one of the greatest of all time.
I borrowed it from her, and I put it on, and I was like, oh my God, I want more of this. Same with a guy called Gerald. When I heard Voodoo Ray for the first time, I was like, holy crap, what is
this? You had great taste in music.
I want more of it. Yeah, I just, and I love my rock as well. I come from my dad's Black Sabbath, Deep Purple.
Oh, yeah.
My mum was Elvis and the Beatles. So I had soul and, hard rock. And at 1 minute, I'd be quiffing my hair. The other minute, I'd be wearing a studs. Yeah, I was just all over the place. Next, I was a mod ska,
Same, bro.
I just love music. It doesn't matter what style it is, because, again, I could not listen to 4/4 every day of my life. I would, my ears would explode.
Well, that's a real DJ, bro. Is a wide acceptance of music. That's a real DJ, and that in itself is like kind of different than the definition of a DJ today. I mean, you obviously do have those type of DJs. I think they exist more on like broadcasting than they do, within the realm of like electronic or EDM or something. I think the guys that well, I'd like to be proven wrong about this, but I think morely the guys who do have a large understanding of music are a little bit of the older guys like ourselves and, Digweed and Pete and stuff like that, where I think a lot more of the young folks are coming into this from the standpoint of, hey, I'm really into producing or making this type of music, and this is what I'm going to play, and this is what I'm going to make, and I'm this DJ who does this, where, I think, in fact, that's more of a performing artist. I think that the term DJ has been lost a little bit. DJs are guys that really know a lot about music. I did this tour of China. Dude, I can tell you about so much crazy stuff I've done in music. I haven't even talked about it yet. Like back, most of my money's been made from doing production music for background, like, shows like everything from America's Top Model, CSI Miami, RuPaul's Drag Race has used my stuff in more than 80 episodes. But anyway, I did this tour in China. 30 cities in 90 days. I did the background music for this like Cirque du Soleil, like magic type show. And it ended up like, just because of the way it was programmed, I had to go along and cue it live. It had to be done. So I went on this tour, and it was wild. But anyway, it was one of the craziest experiences of my life. But anyway, dude, everybody on this tour was like, because they really got to know me, and musically, I was playing music everywhere on the bus, and everyone was like, dude, I have never met anybody who knows more about different styles of music, because I'd be going from rock one day, Van Halen, and like you said, Deep Purple, and these guys, to another day, Eric B and Rakim, and they're just like, dude, it's all so good, but how do you know? And I'm like, bro, all that is a real DJ. Like, that is just a real DJ. There's thousands of people out there like yourself with the same musical knowledge as me. But, a lot of people don't have that musical knowledge. That is the sign of a true DJ. You don't need to mix records. You don't need to do anything to be a true DJ. You just need to know music and play it out for people.
Have a good ear.
Yeah, have a good ear. That's something that's kind of been lost, I think. It is different, in this day and age. So it's what it is. You never know what'll happen. Times change and things come back around. I feel like the vinyl thing is coming back around right now. So
I do as well. I think more, especially like in the UK, more kids are buying vinyl again. Not just dance music, but just music in general. They're just buying vinyl, and I love to see that.
Yeah, me too.
It's history. That's
what
it is.
Yeah.
Any upcoming releases for you? Because I know you just...
Yeah, man, I'm doing some cool stuff right now. Truthfully, my problem is I'm lazy about releasing. Like, I'm not good at sending stuff out. I make tracks all the time. I love to make tracks. When it comes time to, like, send it out, I send it to, like, a few guys and then, like, lose touch with it. And that's one thing I really like about working with Nick Stoynoff, who we touched on earlier, from NOFF Records. Like, this is a dude who I really have a lot of respect for. I've known him for a long time. I used one of his tracks. I did this compilation on Baroque Records called Exploring America in like 2009, and I used one of his tracks. And I've known Nick forever, but he's killing it lately with his label NOFF out of Chicago. And we did a track together, and then he's really been on me about getting this remix. So I've done a remix of that track, of the Panama Red track, which is a strain of Bud, a really good one, by the way. And I did that remix, and John really likes it. He's playing it, and we got some good remixers on board. Lego Wells doing a remix, and Pull Folder. So I'm excited about that. And then what I'm really excited about is I've got some new Tigerhook tracks in the works that I've been working on with Phil Charles. He lives down in Florida right now, and he sent me some stuff that's just mind-blowing, so I'm putting that together. We work really well because he sends me sounds and that are just really dope that he makes with his analog gear, and then I kind of twist it into tracks. So I'm working on some of that stuff right now. So I got like a fat pack that I'm putting together that I'm about to send off to some heads, get John to play some. He's got that Twilo gig coming up. I might fly out for that. I don't know. That'd be pretty dope. You heard about that, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about that.
The first night, and then Danny. It's all Danny.
I feel like that night has already been sold out and gone so well that they're probably going to make that into a recurring thing anyway. If it's not going to be weekly, I imagine they're going to do something monthly at that space. If they were able to do it once, and I'm sure they can do it again. So, I have a feeling maybe that'll turn into something, that's happening regularly, which would be cool. The only question is it the same sound? I mean, it all comes down to the sound. I mean, that was the first phase on, or I don't know if it was the first, but it was the phase on, Steve Dash there at Twilo. And I DJ'd at Twilo twice, and I DJ'd with Papa there and Hernan after it was Twilo. It was another club called Elemental or something. I can't even remember. It was so long ago. But that place is legendary, but the question is the sound going to be on point? The space was cool with Twilo, but what made it famous was the sound. I mean, that phase-on sound in there, nobody had done anything like that at the time. And now you have phase-ons all over, and you have, like, all these other systems. It's 20 years later. It's a lot easier to get good sound, but hopefully the sound's good at that party. I mean, that's what it's going to be all about.
So I would think so. Knowing Danny, I know he's got loads of stacks.
He does, right? He's got stacks, so... Yeah. It's going to be insane, I'm sure.
Yeah, I would love to go to that, but knowing me, I'd be in bed by like 10 o'clock at night. I'm just, Dude,
I can still handle it. If I got to go out, I can still handle it. It'll be all right. I'm just like, I just don't go out like for the point of going out as much as anymore. But I mean, that's the way you go out and you hear sounds. But it's cool because you can listen to them anywhere now online. So, back in the day, you had to go out to the clubs to hear the DJ.
Yeah, you just got on YouTube now and
Exactly. That's true.
You can save some money and just watch everybody else like dancing and stuff. So
yeah, exactly.
So are you playing out at all? I mean, I know you.
Yeah. So a while back, I kind of like, I didn't go and be like, I'm retiring or any like epic thing like that. But a while back, I stepped away just for the fact that like, dude, I get like anxiety in clubs a lot. Like, just talking to people, the sound is loud, and it just like, it wasn't my cup of tea. I just, I don't, get that faded anymore or anything. I like to get up and surf a lot. I surfed a lot when I was a kid. I'm back into surfing for like the last decade and a half, and like, that's an early morning thing, so it's hard to party all night, get up at 6 a.m. in the morning and go surfing. So but having said that, we're doing some stuff. So right now I'm starting a Monday night here, all vinyl night. It's called For the Record, and it's going to be really rad. It's something I'm going to be doing with a couple of buddies of mine who I have a great amount of respect for, and I'm going to have in guests all the time. Halo will be down there. There's someone, Halo Varga, who's a guy who I've always worked with closely. I think he's one of the best DJs. He still plays vinyl nonstop in LA. There's a big vinyl scene out here. Like, LA is the spot for the resurging vinyl scene. My buddy who I'm doing this night with is involved with a record store in Long Beach in the LBC called Footwork, which is dope. A guy who I used to DJ a lot down in Lima. He opened up for me when I went down there, called Kiki Mayor, is doing a lot of stuff on vinyl out here. So there's a lot of cool vinyl going on. So I'm going to start doing this Monday night. Starts this Monday, actually. And it's called For the Record, and it's going to be an all vinyl night. So we're excited about that. The system in that place, it's a spot and calls out here, is really good. Also, with the recording studio, I urge you guys, anybody out there, to look into it. It's called The Music Company. And it's themusiccompany.org, and it's a really cool space. We're doing a podcast. We have one podcast called Beach Break Sessions, and that podcast is one of the, I think it's top 5 like live music podcasts in America right now. There aren't that many out there, truthfully. Actual live music podcasts that happen over and over. The big one is Tiny Desk. There's a big one in Seattle, a couple others. But ours is blown up big on that standpoint. We've had some big bands, lots of views. And then we have a side podcast there called Audio Espresso, which I'm involved in. That's a DJ podcast. And I mentioned it earlier. We've got some guys locally I respect, and I'd like to start getting some more artists internationally. I hope to have Tara Brooks, who's a dear friend of mine, and who's someone you should have on your show. I don't know if you know her. She's a really talented musician and DJ, dear friend of mine. She lives in LA. We hope to have her on one soon, and I had Halo just do one, and I did a vinyl one. So I mean, the only thing is DJs have to come down here and do it. We have it all set up and filmed, and they get behind the decks. It's all filmed and everything. I like what we're doing here with multiple camera angles. I got the interns on it. It's a really nice production. The DJs get it as a piece of promotional material to work with it, so that's why a lot of people are hype on it. There's one guy I come in and do it recently who's kind of a guy I've put under my wing named Dylan Payne. I highly recommend you keep your eye on him. Dylan Payne, Payne. He's traveling all over the world right now, DJing, but doing it like I used to do back in the day, sleeping on guys' couches, at the very beginning when I first started taking off, before I was sleeping in hotels. You're sleeping on guys' couches, you're playing a festival with them, and then you're hanging out with them and working on music in a bedroom studio before we can go to the next place, and then that's how I was doing it when I was young. And this is a kid that's out there doing that. He's blowing up. His Audio Espresso on YouTube has like 20,000 views for us, man. His style is incredible. Highly recommend. He plays records. He played sticks on the Audio Espresso just because we just had the sticks set up. We didn't have the platters set up. But dude, his playing off the sticks is like flawless. His selection is flawless. Like just good deep house. Check him out, Dylan Payne. And then, dude, I'm just right now like involving myself with, bringing up younger guys, I'm 52, dude. I've been there and done that. Like I traveled all over the world. I'm not one of these guys trying to all respect to these older guys, Carl Cox or not, but I saw an article, it's classic. Someone sent me this article with Carl Cox's interview with him in like the early 90s. He was like, I think he was like 25 or something like that. And they were like, what are you planning on doing with DJing in 25 years? And he was like, I'm going to be retired by then. I'm going to be helping the young. I'll be done with DJing. I'm going to be helping. He's still out there DJing every weekend. I'm like, dude, it's time to retire, bro. But when you're getting paid $50,000 to do nothing and show up, not do nothing, but just to have fun and show up and play your records, why would you retire, But, for me, I don't have that. So, I'm not out there playing a lot. Maybe if I could, I would, but I'm not sure. Like, I kind of scared. I don't like to fly as much anymore. I don't like the late nights. So what I try to do is I enjoy the music, and I try to help young dudes, and young women, just help them out in any way I can to further their careers. as I mentioned, Broken Hill's a guy who, he's kind of a success story out of the music company. He's just done incredibly. If you haven't heard of him already, like, he's huge. You're going to be hearing about him soon. He's one of these guys, like, that basically makes tracks for people. Like, it was so classic. Like, he makes tracks. Like, if you hear something nowadays by Blondish or any of these huge DJs, like, who's the other guy, Fisher, or any of these guys, like, they ain't making that track. Someone's making it for them, literally, like making it for them, and then they're paying them for that track and putting their name on it. And there'll be a couple of Zoom sessions where they're like, no, I prefer if you did this, this, and this to it, and that's how that's happening, and that's something that Kurt's really talented as a ghost producer, and that's something that you can really make money off of. I tell a lot of kids now, I'm like, hey, listen, if you really want to make money in the future, you need to learn your chops as an engineer. Because, well, now it's a whole different age. Now we have AI that's just going to fucking make anything. AI is going to kill it for all electronic music. I mean, the stuff I made most of my money off of, which was putting my tracks behind people doing stuff on TV, that's going to be gone. I mean, all these companies like Extreme Music Management, that's the name of the company. I forgot. It's called Extreme Music Management, and they're basically a production company that's owned by Viacom and Sony. And their music, they license music to most of the stuff you hear on TV. And of course they're up in arms. Oh, we aren't going to use any type of AI. We're going to filter. Nah, dude. Sorry, but when you don't have to pay someone, I mean, you should be doing that, but I just know how business works. When you don't have to pay someone royalties, like these guys have to pay me royalties for as long as they use my music. I produced these tracks 20 years ago. I'm still getting paid checks from Extreme Music Management 4 times a year, and checks from ASCAP 4 times a year. Dude, that's all going. You don't have to pay a computer royalties. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe Suno's going to work it out so they do. Like, I got on Suno like 2-3 years ago when it first came out, and started messing around with, like, when it first came out to the public, it was useful, and was messing around with it a lot with my production partner, Aryan, who is one of the most badass producers in the world. His name's Aryan. He's produced under 16-bit Lolitas, Cubicolor. He's a guy from the Netherlands. Dude, he's more talented than Max Martin than any of these. He plays me tracks that, like, he's playing me stuff now with, like, he's done with vocalists on AI, and I'm like, dude, who is that vocalist? That's the sickest shit. He's like, oh yeah, that's an AI track. He's like, I just got AI to do it for me. I'm not going to release it until I find a singer to sing it right. He's got music just stacked up. Like, he is insane. Like, if you ever find Aryan Ali Rock or DJ Ariano or 16BL, he's not out there a lot because he don't mess around. If he don't like you, he don't mess with you. If he plays he makes what he wants, plays what he wants. He's doing stuff with Anjuna forever. I don't know if he is anymore. But anyway, my point being, he's the most genius producer I've ever met, and he was on Suno at the very beginning working with it, and I was working with him on that like 2 years ago, and it became very, very obvious to me from the very beginning that I don't care what type of plan you pay Suno. I don't care what type of mastering deal you have with them. In the end, they're going to own that music. If you make anything off of Suno, you ain't owning it. They're going to own it. They might be bullshitting around the blocks right now because this is the beginning of AI. But dude, they ain't going to let that music. That's their program they made up. You weren't making that music. You're putting in some text code. It's making the music. Sure, you're then downloading the WAV file, sticking it together like an edit, and coming up with some like DJ edit. But it ain't your music. That's Suno's music. And I think there's just going to be this huge windfall moment where people are going to be like, oh my God, I've been making music for AI for a long time and we don't own it. And I think that's the one thing, in the end, like, it's going to happen everywhere, man. Like you already see, like, in the magazines. My sister, who's in the fashion industry, sent me this ad the other day from some famous like brand, and it was a total AI ad, fake model and everything. She was up in arms about it, and I'm like, Abby, agreed. They should use a real photographer who you have to pay. They should use a real model who you have to pay. They should use a real venue that you're going to have to rent to show up to do the shoot. Like, this company is going to pay tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, or they're going to pay nothing and have an AI. Like, it's just fiscal sense. And unfortunately, the world operates on money. Like, everybody's like, oh, no AI now, dude. It's going to take over the whole music industry. Photographers, you're going to be out of a job. Musicians, you're going to be out of a job. Actors, you're going to be out of a job eventually. Sorry, but that's just going to have to go. And there'll be a few guys out there still that are famous, like a very, very few. But dude, like background singers, all these people that make money off of background singing, I would hope with bands and stuff that they'll keep like, you ain't gonna have a computer running around playing your stuff with a band. So I think with bands, there'll still be that element. But dude, DJs, production music, all this stuff. Like all these guys like Porter Robinson and that shit, like that type of music, dude. You heard of Porter Robinson, like the David Guetta, Tiesto stuff? Bye. Dude, I'm hearing AI songs now that just blow their stuff away, dude. Like, so maybe there'll be some huge effort. The music industry will be like, no, we aren't using that because we're going to keep like the real art. But I don't see it. I don't think it's going to happen. So be interested to see how it pans out, brother.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Randall, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, mate. Like I always say, like when you're having a good conversation, I look down just to check on time-wise, and I'm like, we've been talking for nearly an hour and a half. It's insane.
Dude, I gotta go for sure. I had no idea it was an hour and a half. I gotta go into the shop and sell some weed and work on some music, bro, and then go to the studio tonight. I could probably honestly sit here and talk to you all day. It's a lot of fun talking about all stuff.
Mate. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Pleasure's mine.
Where can people? Do you still have your page up?
Yeah, man. So, dude, please go to @DJ_Randall_Jones. It's the Tigerhook Instagram, RANDALLJONES. I'm always doing stuff. I have some stuff coming out on Bedrock soon enough. Still put out stuff on Sudbeat. A lot of the dope labels like N Recordings, Hooch, Tune, Saw Recordings. Those aren't around anymore, but I also really like working with Little Helpers. That's a really dope label that I put stuff out on, that's been a seminal label for years and years. One thing you get old, man, I don't know what it is, but Kurt, my homies that are young, they blast out these tracks in no time. When I used to blast out tracks out, it takes me like a month to finish a track, but, you doing other stuff. But yeah, I got stuff coming out soon, man. There's all kinds of stuff going on. Keep an eye, man. I'm one of the real ones. I'm just out there for the love of the music, for playing the good music, and blast me on Instagram, or if anybody out there needs any help or any feedback as far as their stuff, I'm happy to help anybody, and keep this good vibes and the good culture of like original tech house, original deep house, original techno, original DJ culture going, because that's something that you and I and a few like us still hold on to. And dude, we got to teach them young, brother. Keep it going.
Definitely. Well, yeah.
Thank you, brother.
Like Randall said, go check him out. And as I always say, please look after one another, stay safe, and I will see you next time.
Tigerhook, baby. Talk to you soon. Thanks, brother.
Calling for meet Uncle Uncle. Welcome to Blackboard Jungle. So don't you fumble, just be humble.
every day is upon that road. All of it so every day is on that road.
A stupid rapper is a motherfucker that has somebody else tell them what to do, which is not always wrong, but if it's something that you feel that you don't have to do, you really have to question it and find out why they want you to do it. Most of it, they feel like, well, you have the hat, the kango, and this, and you have to be like that. But if you don't really want to be like controlling your shit, don't be the type of rapper. And if you an ignorant motherfucker, they gonna thrive off that. They could tell you anything. And I've never been stupid. So, especially with a whole big lump sum of money, I gotta keep my eye on it. So I just stay more in the business side of everything instead of being a nigga that's gonna get drunk at the bar and shit from all Buffington and just stay in hotels all night and just trick a whole lot of money. I stay home with my wife and watch.